thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks also to Michael and Sasha and the New America Foundation for inviting me to be with you today. I'm sorry that our schedule on the Hill is making it impossible for me to stay too long, but I want to share a little bit about Pittsburgh's wireless network and my take on the prospects in Congress around issues that the panel has raised. Now, you don't need to tell me, you don't need me to tell you that the history of municipal broadband networks is a lot like the history of municipally owned electric utilities. Communities across the country demanded access to electricity, and when they were passed over by investors for more profitable areas, they decided to do it themselves. And there's been a lot of talk about Earthlink and others pulling out of projects in Philadelphia and San Francisco. What they probably haven't heard is that companies like Meraki have raised $20 million and are preparing to offer free Wi-Fi in San Francisco where Earthlink failed, and with a plan to do it for about half of what the Earthlink proposal was. So I would say that those who hear the death knell for municipal wireless networks may have driven to the wrong funeral home. They might have been premature. There might be a premature rush to install systems everywhere, but I also think we're seeing a premature declaration of death. I think reality is somewhere in the middle. Many municipal wireless, I think, has an important role to play in many of our communities across the country. And I'm really glad that one of my constituents, John Paya, is able to come down here today and share with us the results from his latest paper about my hometown and his adopted hometown, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh started off with big goals for its Wi-Fi deployment. But as John's paper points out, it's next to impossible to have it all on today's technology. Ubiquitous coverage, competitive access, free for citizens, and no cost to the city. Instead, municipal Wi-Fi can work when the goals are more modest, limiting coverage downtown or to specific neighborhoods, or if the city acts as an anchor tenant, hooking up city offices, police cars, power, water, and parking meters. One of Pittsburgh's biggest challenges coming out of the post-industrial era is retaining the best and brightest students that come out of Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Pittsburgh each year. Most of them love Pittsburgh for its charming neighborhoods and its vibrant social life and high quality and low cost of living. You have to forgive me a little bit for this Pittsburgh boosterism, but I feel obligated to get a plug in because it's warranted. But the problem is there aren't enough jobs in the area for all these bright kids. So Pittsburgh has to become a better business destination, as well as to allow graduates to start and incubate their own companies. By choosing a downtown-based system that gives a few hours a day of free access to anyone, and combined with other independent free networks in Shadyside and around the airport, Pittsburgh is ahead of other cities around the country. The downtown network has already drawn several thousand people to sign up, and we're drawing new conventions and meetings to downtown Pittsburgh. A lot of that has to do with the leadership from people like our city councilman Bill Peduto, from John here, and from nonprofits like the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership and Three Rivers Connect. Of course, flexibility is the key for municipal networks of any kind. Other cities have chosen other methods, other technologies, and other ways of paying for it. Communities like Kutztown, Pennsylvania built their own fiber optic network years before local incumbents pledged to get it to them. It's especially interesting to look at cities in Pennsylvania, especially within the context of House Bill 30, which passed the Pennsylvania State Legislature and was signed into law in 2004. It gave over $100 million in subsidies and an estimated $4.2 billion in rate increases to incumbent phone companies in exchange for the promise to build out a high-speed network across their territory. A network known as FiOS to the handful of Verizon customers where they've built it in my district. House Bill 30 has had its share of controversy, as Verizon had promised and gotten out of previous commitments to build a fiber network across the state. However, the biggest lightning rod against the bill was the provision that prevented cities and towns across my state from establishing their own broadband networks unless the town asked the incumbent local phone company to build them a network at a comparable speed first, regardless of the cost. For example, if a community wanted wireless, they might get told that wired DSL already had met that speed. Only after immense pressure from mayors and council members help from lawmakers in Congress and Democrats at the Federal Communications Commission and the Federal Trade Commission did cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh get approval from incumbents to move forward and work with different private partners. Unfortunately, we don't know what kind of chilling effect it had on other communities without the political will to challenge the phone company in the face of a cumbersome state preemption. So we don't know how many communities will have to wait for broadband when it might have been economically feasible to take their digital futures in their own hands. So we in Congress should do something about that. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill that my friends Rick Boucher and Fred Upton introduced last year called the Community Broadband Act that would allow any community in the country to provide advanced broadband services to its citizens. Similar language was also in the franchising bill our committee debated, but ultimately did not pass before Democrats took over the majority last year. But the idea has traction on both sides of the aisle. So, what are the chances that this bill gets signed into law before President Bush steps aside? Well, I wish I could give you good news, but I have to tell you the House has already passed two non-controversial telecom bills earlier this year, including a bill on broadband mapping, that haven't even gotten out of the Senate. The mapping bill has the support of the business community, including broadband providers themselves. Nevertheless, I understand there's a hold on the Senate bill that prevents it from going to conference with the House bill. And now a version of the mapping bill that never went through the Senate Commerce Committee has been attached to the Senate version of the Farm Bill. It's disappointing that getting something good signed into law has been proven so challenging. The House bill, as everyone knows, had a lot of vetting and underwent substantial changes to get everybody on board, and it got a wide bipartisan margin in the House. But it bodes poorly on the chances of getting much done on these issues in this Congress. Of course, the preemption issue isn't the only issue relevant to municipal wireless networks. Business Week suggested that municipal wireless doesn't work as well as hoped because of the shortcomings of wireless technologies like Wi-Fi. That might have some degree of truth to it. As New America points out, Wi-Fi operates on frequencies that don't travel very far and have a hard time penetrating walls and trees. And Wi-Fi itself was designed for small settings like conference rooms. So seeing it deployed across expansive convention centers, on airplanes, across entire cities, is really a testament to the engineer's ability to make a whole lot out of very little. So the question is, how can we expand the benefits of unlicensed to other parts of our airways that can better pass through walls and natural impediments? Well, one idea that's got a lot of traction, and that's due in no small part to the work of the New America Foundation, is using the frequencies that local television broadcasters in a given market aren't using, sometimes called white spaces. For example, Channel 7 is used in D.C., Channel 8 in Baltimore. Could a low-powered device on Channel 8 prevent anyone in the Baltimore area from getting that channel? Doesn't seem likely. But could a lot of devices that don't properly know how to detect and back off Channel 8 driving on I-95 from D.C. to Baltimore screw up someone's TV signal? It's plausible. The reason I don't believe legislation opening white spaces to broadband devices will pass out of our committee this year is because the fight right now is at the FCC, which is conducting feasibility studies using prototype devices in labs in the field as we speak. So what should the FCC decide? Well, I'm not an engineer, so I can't tell you if these devices interfere with broadcast television signals. A lot of my constituents rely on broadcast TV as their primary source for news, information, entertainment, and sports, and the stations in Pittsburgh do a great job serving them. So I think many of us are hesitant to push for a political solution to what's really, in my mind, an engineering question. Having said that, I don't believe it's an unsolvable engineering question. I believe it's going to be solved. But regardless of how the engineers come down and what the FCC commissioners decide, many members of the Energy and Commerce Committee will be looking at the engineers' report for guidance on whether Congress needs to step in and balance everyone's desires to spur broadband deployment with our desires to protect consumers who rely on over-the-air broadcast, whether we can truly have it both ways, or if the risks to broadcasting are too great for Congress or the FCC to tolerate. Well, what are the things we can get done? I've told you everything that isn't going to happen. What might happen? Well, there's been a few accounts that Chairman Markey is working on a bill providing a national framework for wireless consumer protection, a cell phone bill of rights, so to speak. I'm hopeful that a good bill could receive the support of consumer groups as well as the wireless industry, but such a bill hasn't been introduced yet, and any speculation about what it should include would be premature. Of course, I would also point out that the calendar will be a challenge, and getting work done in a presidential election year, and one I might add when all 435 members of the House are up for election, is always difficult. But sometimes you just need to do what's right and get it done. So lastly, let me say that we in Congress need to hear the drumbeat for change from you, our constituents, on these issues. Few elected officials get elected based on their stances on these issues, so they often don't pay attention until they hear from the folks back home. But I want to assure you, contrary to public opinion, elected officials do pay careful attention to what their constituents tell them. And that's why I think we need to start to see a more grassroots effort, too, in every community, so that legislators, that this gets on their radar screen and makes it a little bit easier for people like myself and others on the committee who want to see this progress finally move out of the halls of Congress. It's a pleasure to be here today. I unfortunately have another press conference back on the Hill that if I grab a cab in about the next 5 minutes, I might get to before two senators start without me. So with that, I just want to thank you very much. Look forward to engaging you in the future. If you have any questions, feel free to get back to us, and we'd be happy to have Kenneth or myself get back to you on any questions you may have about what's going on. So thank you very much.